Edgewood University Year 1. Episode 5. Truth. I can't believe what you say, because I watch what you do. James Baldwin.
"Layla, wait!" yelled Cassidy, and Layla turned her glowing stare toward the banshee, and Cassidy raised her hands and stepped back. "He needs to hear what I have to say. After all, he is an alpha." She snarled in a distorted voice, turning back to Peter. He chuckled, and Layla hissed. "Well, what can I say? I inherited the alpha power over my pack when my father died," he said smugly. Bailey and Cassidy looked at each other and swallowed hard, and Layla studied the man, sneering. "The alpha Hellcat dragon spark can only be resurrected by the bite of an alpha from a purebred pack," she snarled, and Peter's eyes started glowing red as he cracked his neck. "So it's true. Knowledge is passed with the bite, but if you were mundane, this shouldn't have happened." He growled, showing sharp teeth, and Layla hissed, showing growing canines. She growled, noticing Tyler and a guy with bleached hair running toward them. She gave Peter a clever look and smirked. "You're the one who bit me," she snarled as Tyler got closer. He gawked at his father, but Peter didn't know he was standing behind him. "Yes, it was I. I attacked you in the forest, but didn't know you would become such a powerful creature. I wanted that power," Peter snarled, and Bailey and Cassidy looked at Tyler wide-eyed. "Dad? What the fuck?" Layla smirked at Peter, and his eyes widened as he turned around. "You little bitch," he said, looking at Layla, and she gave him a smug look, shrugging. Peter looked at Tyler angrily and straightened. "What are you doing out here?" he demanded, and Tyler growled. "It was you? You're the one who bit her? Why did you blame it on Uncle Jeff?" he asked, breathing heavily, and Layla sneered at Peter. He tried to devise a reason, but he couldn't, and his son shook his head, crossing his arms. "Why, Layla?" She looked at you like daddy number 2. You came after 2 kids exploring the forest. You came after me, and I'm your kid." He growled, and the flames around Layla disappeared. "You treated me like I was your daughter. I trusted you. How could you ruin my life like this?" She stammered as tears rolled down her cheeks and searched the man's eyes. She saw no love in them and blew a shaky breath as he shrugged and hummed. "You were an easy target," he said, and Tyler snarled. "We accepted her into our family, and you treat her like this. Was Mom a part of this?" "No, dear, I certainly was not," stated Maya, approaching with her warlock guards. Peter turned, sneered at Layla, brought his arm forward, and backhanded her as hard as possible. Layla cried out as she flew across the yard, landed on the ground, and rolled to a stop. She sobbed as she punched the ground and sat up, holding her swollen jaw. But he was going to pay for that. She got to her feet and walked toward the group. Peter looked at his wife, smirking, and Maya sighed, shaking her head. Layla sniffed, looking at Maya, and tears built in the woman's eyes. Tyler saw the ugly bruise forming on the side of Layla's face, and a low protective growl rumbled in his chest. Maya looked at Bailey's and Cassidy's frightened faces and blew a long breath. "Well, we've certainly had an eventful night, haven't we? I think the students should head inside, and my husband and I should have a long talk," she breathed. Bailey and Cassidy nodded, but Tyler raised his hand, walking toward Layla and putting his arm around her shoulders. She blew a shaky breath and rested her head against his chest. "Lay and I are going nowhere until we see Peter in handcuffs," he stated, and his father glared at him. "How dare you to disrespect me like that? You don't call your father your alpha by his first name ever," he scolded with crimson eyes, and Tyler shrugged. "I don't consider you my father or my alpha after what you did to her." He growled with glowing yellow eyes and pulled Layla tighter against his chest. Before anyone blinked, Peter drew his arm back and backhanded his son. Tyler let go of Layla and flew into a tree trunk. "You better learn your place, Beta," Peter roared. Layla looked at Tyler, wincing, groaning, and rolling on the ground, and felt the enraged beast inside claw its way to the surface. She closed her eyes, inhaled deeply, and let the monster take over. Her body was engulfed in bright orange, red, and yellow flames, and the enormous dragon wings appeared. Maya stared at the girl in awe as her hand went to her mouth and gasped. She watched Layla grab Peter by his shirt and throw him across the schoolyard. Maya, Bailey, Cassidy, and the two warlock men stared at Layla as she stalked across the lawn toward Peter. Tyler shook his head, regaining his senses, and saw Layla, engulfed in flames, going after his father. He scrambled to his feet, ran as fast as possible, and tackled Layla to the ground. She snarled at him, trying to claw his face, but he dodged her oncoming claws. He stared into her eyes and made his eyes glow. "Lie, stop. It's over. Let my mother handle him," he said softly, and Layla growled, searching his eyes. "He deserves to get the shit beat out of him," she snarled, and Tyler nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He does, but you can't control yourself yet and might take things too far," he said, rubbing the side of her face. She stared at him momentarily, sighed, and the flames disappeared. He saw the tears building in her eyes and sighed. Layla saw the pendant swinging from his neck and grabbed it. She inhaled a sharp breath, turning the silver wolf's head in her fingers, and looked at the inscription on the back. "First to my most bestest friend in the universe. I will never come up with the words to tell you exactly how I feel, because the feeling is something I've never felt before. I more than love you and always will. Love, Lie." A tear slid from her eye, and Tyler wiped it away. "A life without you is not a life worth living," she said, and he smiled, rubbing her temple. Maya and Peter watched their eyes shimmer, and Peter sighed in relief. Even though he was caught, his son tamed the Hellcat beast, and the school was safe. The warlocks lifted Peter, and immediately, Peter felt weak and sleepy. He smiled at his son and Layla, and his eyes closed. The men lifted the man and put his arms over their shoulders. Maya sighed, looking at her husband, and shook her head. Layla touched Tyler's face and smiled. "I missed you so much," she whispered, and he nodded. "Do you believe this is all real yet?" he asked, raising an eyebrow, and she shook her head. "Hell no, but I don't care as long as I have you." He smiled and bent his head, and Maya cleared her throat. "Tyler?" Tyler sighed and looked at his mother. "Yeah? Would you help Layla get to her feet and come with me? I'm sure Cassidy and Bailey can help her there, sweet," she said, and he scowled, nodding. It was out the attitude. She scolded, and Tyler made a face. Layla giggled as he smiled at her. He stood, held out his hands, and pulled her to her feet. He brushed his knuckles across her cheek and smiled. "See you soon, Lay," he said softly, letting her go. Layla felt something odd in the air and quickly grabbed his hand. Tyler searched her eyes, and she slowly shook her head. "Don't go," she whispered. He quickly smiled, kissed the side of her mouth, squeezed her hand, and left with his mother. She huffed a sob, feeling like she would never see him again, and lost her balance. She hit the ground, and Cassidy and Bailey ran to her side. "Are you all right?" asked Bailey, and Layla shook her head, starting to cry. The girls hugged their friend, and Layla hugged them back. "I don't understand any of this," she cried. "Come on, let's head to the suite, and we can talk there," suggested Cassidy, smoothing Layla's copper locks. "Okay." She sniffed, and they got to their feet. The girls hugged each other and headed inside the school. 3 days passed since Peter outed himself, and Tyler and his mother disappeared. Layla missed Tyler and wanted him to come back, but she didn't know where they had gone. "Layla, time to get up," yelled Cassidy through the door. The pounding on the door got louder, and Layla groaned, rolling over and staring at the ceiling. "Layla, don't make me blow your door down and drag you out of there," yelled Cassidy, and Layla growled. "I'm up." "Good. Now get dressed. The school's called for a mandatory assembly in the Great Hall." Layla got out of bed and pulled on black leggings, a black tank top, and a cream-colored oversized sweater. She put her wallet and phone in a small over-the-shoulder purse, slipped on her boots, and pulled her hair in a messy bun. She looked in the mirror, wiped old mascara from her eyes, fixed her earrings and nose ring, and walked toward the door. She opened the door and gave Cassidy a thoughtful look. "There, I'm ready," she breathed, and Cassidy and Bailey smiled. "Great, shall we?" asked Bailey, opening the suite door, and Cassidy nodded. Layla blew a breath and headed into the hall. "Maybe they're back," said Bailey, and Layla only nodded. Layla, Bailey, and Cassidy sat in the back row of fold-out chairs, and Layla felt uncomfortable. She bounced her leg, wrapped her arms around herself, and chewed on her cuticles. She couldn't sit still, and Bailey and Cassidy looked at her with concern. "Are you all right?" whispered Bailey, knowing she wasn't, and Layla only nodded, clenching her teeth. She felt uncontrollable magic running through her body and fought it as hard as she could. The student body took their seats, and surprisingly, Maya walked out onto the stage. Her murmurs rang through the crowd, and Tyler walked onto the stage and took his place by his mother's side. Bailey gasped, and Layla looked at the stage, chewing on her finger. She picked her head up and stared at Tyler. He met her gaze, and she felt something wrong in the air. She scowled at him with glowing eyes, and he shook his head. The energy surged, filling Layla's mind with memories, and she gasped, squeezing her eyes shut. "Yes, I'm the one who bit you." Peter's words echoed in her head, and her anger boiled. "You came after your own kid." Layla exhaled as she felt a powerful surge rush through her veins. She whimpered and opened glowing crimson eyes, looking at Tyler. His eyes widened, and she sneered, growling. Cassidy and Bailey's eyes widened, and Layla snarled and ran out of the room. "Layla," called Cassidy, but her friend was gone. Layla ran from the school and across the yard and didn't stop when she reached the forest. She kept running, feeling another surge of magic rush through her body, and ran faster. She didn't have a destination, but as long as the place was away from the insanity she couldn't wrap her head around and found some peace, she would be happy. She ran until her legs were sore and stopped to catch her breath. She looked around the forest and noticed it was getting dark, and the air seemed cooler. She wrapped her arms around herself and couldn't see the school anywhere. Where was she? Layla sighed, walked through the leaves, and stopped, noticing lights on a barn-like structure. She walked toward the building and saw it was a little country bar. What was a bar doing out in the middle of nowhere? She looked around curiously, smelled something strange in the air, and hugged herself. Layla felt unsafe, looked at the front door, and blew a breath. "It's going to be okay, and if not, I'll just burn the place to the ground," she told herself, walking toward the door. She grabbed the handle, sighed, and pulled it open. She slowly walked into the establishment, and everyone inside looked at her. Some men were sitting at a table in the corner shooting darts. Another group of men sat at a back table, and the bar was empty. She swallowed hard, smiled nervously, and quickly sat at the bar's end. Layla pulled her hair out of the bun and put her head in her hands. "What have I got myself into?" she whispered, not realizing she was being approached. "Hi, what can I get you?" Layla jumped and looked at the girl with shoulder-length dark blonde hair and green eyes, and the girl smiled. "Oh, something strong, please?" she breathed, leaning against the wall and pulling out her wallet. She put a $10 bill on the counter, and the girl looked at the money oddly. This one's on the house?" she said, and Layla gave her a strange look. "Okay. Sorry, I've had a strange day, and I kind of got lost," she said, shaking her head. The girl nodded, handing her a glass of glowing yellow liquid, and Layla took it, pressed her lips together, and put her forehead on the bar. "Will this nightmare ever end?" she whispered. She picked her head up, looked at the glass, and sighed. "Fuck it. Cheers," she said, taking a big gulp of the glowing liquid. "Wait!" the girl yelled, but it was too late. A powerful burn went through Layla's body, and Layla cringed, whimpering. Suddenly, she turned her head and burped. Her eyes widened as flames shot out of her mouth, and she stared. She looked at the girl blankly, and the girl gave her a concerned look. "Are you all right?" she asked, and Layla grinned drunkenly, feeling a buzz.